Welcome. Today's topic is an introduction to fermented dairy products. We all enjoy fermented dairy products because of their characteristics refreshing acid taste, good digestibility, health promoting characteristics and their proximity to functional foods, which is the demand of today. These are some of the examples of fermented dairy products which we all are consuming: dahi, छाछ, Shrikhand, yogurt and lassi. What is the objective today? After going through this, you will be able to define and state the generic composition of fermented dairy products. You will be able to identify different type of fermented dairy products, explain the principle involved in their production, state the characteristics features of fermented dairy products and describe the nutritional and therapeutic benefits of fermented dairy products. First we come to the definition. How do we define the fermented dairy products? The milk products prepared by lactic acid fermentation or a combination of this and yeast fermentation, that is alcohol fermentation, example is kefir, are called the fermented cultured dairy products. Fermented products are an oldest method of preservation of milk solids, and today around over 3,500 traditional fermented food products exist. The IDF definition is the products prepared from milk are milk derived components, and most of these components have to be pasteurized. They should come by the action of specific microorganisms which results in reduction of the pH and calculation of casein. The starter culture should be viable, active and abundant, having at least 10 raised to the power of 7 cloning forming unit per gram. So IDF definition gives more in detail about the functional dairy products, that is they should be milk based, they should be pasteurized, they should have specific microorganisms and the culture should be viable, should be there. These are some of the examples of fermented dairy products: dahi, छाछ, Shrikhand, lassi, cultured buttermilk, acidophilus milk, yogurt, kefir, kumis and lemon. These are bacteria based, yeast based and mold based fermented products are there. In our country, dahi, Shrikhand, lassi, छाछ are popular. Simultaneously, yogurt is also popular in our country. What is the composition of fermented milks? They are prepared from the milk, so the composition varies more or less with the milk. The total solids are slightly more than the milk. It is in the range of 14 to 18%. Fat can vary from 0.1 to 10%. We may have the low fat, medium fat or high fat fermented dairy product. Proteins are in the range of 4 to 6%. Lactose is less, from 2 to 3%. It contains lactic acid, that is 0.6 to 1.1, and the pH is 3.8 to 4.8. Now the composition and organic characteristics of the fermented dairy products will vary depending upon the initial quality of milk, manufacturing condition, type and level of starter culture and age of the product will be there. The major groups of classification the fermented dairy products is primarily on the basis of acidity. If it is a low acid product, the examples are छाछ, cultured buttermilk and cultured cream. Medium acid products are dahi, sour dahi, yogurt and acidophilus milk, and high acid products are like Shrikhand, Bulgarian sour milk, and acid alcohol is kefir and kumis. These are the examples of fermented dairy products. Now we come to the principle. It involves basically inoculation of starter culture into the milk. We all know that milk contains lactose, which is a carbohydrate, a disaccharide. So fermentation involves oxidation of an organic material, that is lactose, into a range of products, and primarily the products are organic acid, diacetyl, acetaldehyde, carbon dioxide and could be alcohol also. And when there is a metabolism of citric acid, it results in diacetyl also. And these metabolites provides a preservating effect on inhibiting the growth of spoilage as well as of pathogenic microorganisms which are presented in the fermented dairy products. So, the principle is the oxidation of lactose which gives the lactic acid, and because of this lactic acid there is a preservation of effects which inhibits the growth of spoilage and particularly pathogenic organisms. And what this is brought about by use of the bacteria. These bacteria bring the physical, chemical, sensory and nutritional change into the milk or what we call the starting material. Because of this, there is a lowering of pH takes place, and because of lowering of pH, the milk which has the colloidal calcium phosphate, this goes into the solubilization, and because of this there is a leaching of casein into milk serum phase. This causes the agglomeration of milk proteins into three-dimensional network, and which increases the viscosity and gel formation. That is why we say that these products, fermented dairy products, are viscoelastic and they have a network of agglomeration of milk proteins wherein the fat globules and the serum portion is there. The texture depends upon the rate of acidification, that is inoculum size and temperature. These are the examples of the bacteria which are used in the fermented dairy products. This is an example of bacteria mainly used for production of yogurt. You can see on your left hand side Lactobacillus, and on the right side it is the Streptococcus thermophilus is there. It is a mixed strain which is used in the yogurt production. Now we come that what is the starter culture? We understood that fermentation is a process where some bacteria is involved in oxidation of lactose to lactic acid. Now these bacteria, when we use for some good purpose, we call them the starter culture. When they are for the bad purpose, we call them the pathogens. So these starter culture consist of food grade microorganisms, and the microorganisms which are used for the fermented dairy products, we classify them as the lactic acid bacteria. They are normally gram positive, non-motile, non-spore forming, anaerobic but aerotolerant, catalase negative, cocci or rods could be there. Lactic acid bacteria have 4 to 5 genera mainly: Lactococcus, Lactobacillus, Leuconostoc, Pedicocci and Streptococcus. These are the main genera which is there, and normally we classify them under GRAS, what we call the generally regarded as safe status. So these are the called the starter culture. Now the main starter cultures which are used for the fermented dairy products, we can classify into two components. We call them as mesophilic culture and thermophilic culture, and this difference is based on their optimal growth temperature. While mesophilic culture, they normally grow at ambient temperature. Optimum temperature is around 28 degrees centigrade, and the genera which is common is used is Lactococcus and Leuconostoc. They are coccus shaped, homofermented, and they normally use left rotatory lactic acid. The advantage with the mesophilic culture is they also utilize citrate for production of diacetyl. A very common example of this product is our dahi. The traditional dahi which we prepare at home is a mixed culture, and it's a normally mesophilic culture is here, and that's why the dahi has a distinct flavor as compared to the other fermented dairy products. Now when we come to the thermophilic culture, they grow at high temperature around 37 to 42 degrees centigrade. They can grow at 45 degrees centigrade. Optimum temperature is 42 degrees centigrade, and the genera which is there Lactobacillus and Streptococcus, and the example is yogurt, and there is a very good example of associative and symbiotic growth of these bacteria in particularly yogurt preparation. Now we come to the what is the role of starter culture. So first is primarily they develop the acidity. This is the main role, that there should be decrease in pH, there should be increase in lactate. Because of this only the secondary role comes into the picture, that is the coagulation takes place, that is the aggregation of the casein particles. There is an explosion of moisture where it is required, because in our case it is not required. Then there is a texture formation, flavor production, pleasant acid test, and they also protects against the pathogens and spoilage. So the starter culture plays an important role in the fermented dairy products, primarily for the development of acidity. Then they cause the coagulation, and they also protect against the pathogens and spoilage, and gives the acid and flavor taste to the products is there. There are different types of starters. What we call the single strain starters, as the name indicates, they are the pure culture of lactic acid bacteria. Single strain, there could be like Lactococcus lactis or Lactococcus kermades. Like one is used mainly for the acid production, one is acid and which is more responsible for the flavor is there, but it will be pure culture will be used, we can use. When we say mixed strain is there, this means there are two or more strains which are used in combination. Example is like I gave the example of yogurt where we use the two combination. In this case like Lactococcus lactis, Kermades could be there. Here when the product we want the acid also and the flavor is also important is there. Similarly for the yogurt also, when we give the example of Lactobacillus and Streptococcus, it is an example of mixed strain is there. Then sometimes we use multiple starters also. Multiple starters when we want some different characteristics are to be used, like you want to increase the therapeutic value, you want to increase the flavor, you want some particular characteristics is there. Now multiple strain characteristics, they have their own advantage, because if one of the strain fails but the other strain will work and the product will be produced, and then normally the phase activity is reduced. These are the examples of there. But then the normally we call them the thermophilic lactic acid bacteria. These are the examples which are used as a culture, and the two bacteria which are normally used, Lactobacillus and the Thermophilus, are the used. The starter cultures, there are a lot of advancements are there. Earlier when the fermented dairy products like even including cheese also used to be prepared, there was a very scientific method of propagation. Still where the cultures are produced, these are being followed. You have to have the master culture or commercial culture which is obtained from the particularly the manufacturers. Then we propagate to make mother culture, then intermediate culture and bulk starter which is used at the production time. But nowadays because of the advancement we have come to the DVS culture. DVS culture means direct vat set culture. These are available from manufacturers. You have to take the culture and add to the milk at particularly proper temperature. The production method, propagation method of culture is being avoided because it required lot of hygienic conditions for production of cultures. So nowadays we directly use the direct vat start culture is there. Next comes what should be the characteristics of good starter culture, because they are the heart of the fermented foods. First thing is they should be able to produce sufficient lactic acid at desirable rate. We must know that these starters are known as the lactic pump. They produce the lactic acid at a very fast rate, and sufficient should be produced at desirable rate, because the rate of acid production controls the texture of the products is there. They should also able to produce the acid over the good range of temperature, because of some reason if there is a temperature fluctuations are there, they should be able to produce over the good range of the temperature. There should be resistance to antibiotics and bacteriophages. Similarly, they should be active in presence of inhibitory substances which could be present into the milk, like a sanitary substance or any other substance is there, and but they should not produce bacterocins or antibiotics type of substances which can reduce the growth of the culture. So this should be avoided. They should be able to produce flavor, aroma, consistency, body and texture in the fermented dairy products. These are the characteristics of a good starter culture. Now, what are the factors which affect fermentation? Because as we mentioned, the products involve fermentation process, which is the heart. The first thing is optimum temperature. Depending upon the culture, the temperature should be there. It could be 27 to, if it is a mesophilic culture, then the optimum temperature should be 27 to 32 degrees centigrade, and if it is a 37 thermophilic is there, where the optimum temperature of 42 degrees centigrade, that is the optimum temperature should be there. The pH. pH plays an important role. As we mentioned, bacteria are like the lactoacid bacteria, they are like a lactic acid pump, but after certain stage, when the acidity is very low or the pH is very low, then they are detrimental for the viability of the lactic acid bacteria. So we have to take care that the pH should not fall very low. Once it falls low, the bacteria will not be able to grow. Then the strain compatibility. If we are using two strains, the compatibility has to be ensured. But as I mentioned, nowadays devious cultures are available, so the problem is less. Then the inhibitory substances should be minimum, and that is particularly residual antibiotics and sanitizers should be absent altogether. If they are there, they can stop the growth of the bacteria. Bacteriophages are the main culprit. They can cause the problem in the fermented dairy products. They are the main cause for the slow acid production, and the culture should be, or the environment or with the contamination should be ensured that there is no bacteriophages should be present. Incubation period will vary depending upon the type of culture and the temperature which is used, but it should be kept into mind that the 16 to 24-hour incubation is adequate. After this, there will be not growth, will not take place, otherwise there is a problem in the culture is there. Then we come to the other thing, heat treatment of milk is very important. Because of the heat treatment, it drives out dissolved oxygen, because oxygen is not required in there. It should not be minimum, it should be present. So it is. Then there is a formation of sulfahydral compounds which acts as a growth factor for the growth of the bacteria. So it is a positive. They also helps in the destruction of inhibitory substances, and they also helps in killing of antagonistic bacteria which are bad for these things. So heat treatment is must for the product. The degree of aeration, as you mentioned, the microorganism prefer reduced oxygen tension. So like anything like aeration, agitation and the surface culture depress the activity of the fermentation. Now these are some of the examples of fermented dairy products. Like dahi is one of the good examples, it is well known, and the microorganisms are Lactococcus lactis. Similarly, we have the Lactococcus lactis subspecies Cremoides. For yogurt, it is Lactobacillus acidophilus or Streptococcus thermophilus or Lactobacillus bulgaricus. Similarly, the cultured buttermilk is very popular in Western country, and the microorganisms are Lactococcus lactis, diacetyl lactis, and the Cremoides is there. For lassi, Lactobacillus bulgaricus is used. For acidophilus milk, we use the acidophilus, and for the Bulgarian buttermilk, it is Lactobacillus bulgaricus is used. For Shrikhand, it is Streptococcus thermophilus and Lactobacillus bulgaricus is there. Similarly, for the kumis also is the one of the products. Now we come to the what is the general steps involved in preparation of the fermented dairy products. First step is we have to take raw milk and we have to standardize it. Standardization is must because we should increase the SNF percentage. Once we increase the SNF percentage, it gives the desirable texture to the product. Body and texture to the product is given by the increase in the total solid, and more or less its increase in the SNF so that the protein is more. Then homogenization also helps. Homogenization is done as 55 to 65 degrees centigrade at 15 to 20 megapascals and then 5 megapascals, and two-stage homogenization is done, and it is to say that the creaming is avoided and there is uniform distribution of fat is there. Then we do the heat treatment 80 to 85 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes or 90 to 95 degrees centigrade for 5 minutes are there. Then there is a cooling to the incubation temperature depending upon the culture we are using, either is this 42 to 45 degrees centigrade, that is thermophilic, or it is a mesophilic culture we use it. The culture will, addition of culture rate will again depend upon the type of fermentation we are going, whether we are going for fast fermentation or we are going for the slow fermentation. Then there could be two type of products could be there. If we are going for the set product, then we pack them, then we do the incubation at the appropriate temperature, and then cooling and cold storage are there. If the product is going for the stirred, then we do the incubation, we prepare in the bulk, then we do the cooling and after stirring, and then cooling, and then cold storage could be there for the stirred product could be there. Now, what are the principles for the quality product is there? So, first is increase the total solid or SNF to increase the protein, because this will enhance the water holding capacity and there will be no synersis or whey separation will not take place. Then homogenization is also preferred because it prevents creaming and there is a uniform distribution of fat takes place. Heating is must as mentioned because it drives out the dissolved oxygen, it denatures the whey proteins which helps in the giving the texture to the product, and it increases the water binding capacity is there. Then inoculation with specific culture, we prefer DVS culture and then incubation at appropriate time and temperature profile depending upon the culture, depending upon the product, depending upon the composition. Then it should be properly cooled, packed and properly stored is there. Now, what are the changes which are taking place in lactic fermentation? As we say the milk, the lactose is decreased, amount of whey protein also decreased because there is a denaturation is there, its association is there. So, some of the very small amount of protein also less is there. Then there is some of the vitamins also is lost like B1, B2, C and folic acid is there. Now, what is increased is very important is lactic acid, there is a increase, galactose amount is the glucose is there, and we mentioned about the some of the metabolites like polysaccharides, free amino acids, flavoring compounds, there is some vitamins, some organic acid and antibacterial substances are also produced. Now, what are the requirements for fermented milk products? Our ISA standards gives requirements. Acidity, lactic acid maximum for sweet dahi should be 0.7 and for sour dahi it is 1.0. Yeast and mold count should be 100, maximum is there. Coliform count is 10 and phosphatase test should be negative. Now, what should be the characteristics of fermented dairy products? Like acidity should be in range of 0.7 to 0.9%. Physical structure should be viscous, non-Newton fluid to a gel network depending upon the type of products. Important metabolites, lactic acid is must, acetaldehyde, diacetyl and exopolysaccharides. It should have pleasant acid taste. It should be free from off flavors, gas holes and whey pockets. Whey separation should not take place. Now, we come to the nutritional aspect. If we take the milk and if you take any of the fermented milk product, so first thing is there is a 20%, approximately 20% decrease in lactose and there is some vitamins is there. So, because of this, the edible energy is also less by small percentage. It is more like same, but we can say it is less. But what are the advantages? Because the fermented dairy products are recognized because of their nutritional advantages. It improves the digestibility because of the enzymes present in the bacteria, the proteins and fat are pre-digested. Similarly, the people who are not able to digest the lactose and they have the gas problem or other things. So, the LAB enzyme, the bacteria, they produce the lactase activity and could be there. Similarly, because of the low acidity product, that is a low pH product, there is a decrease in pH of stomach, and because of this the pathogens cannot grow and they cannot form into the liver. The minerals absorption are better because they are soluble at the low pHs is there. Now, what are the other benefits? Particularly this is good for the lactose intolerant people, elevation of lactose intolerance, because microorganisms they produce the lactase enzyme activity and it is there. Protection against the gastrointestinal infection, because of this low pH and because of these bacteria they do not allow the pathogens and other bacteria to colonize at the intestine part of there. Results have also shown that their anticarcinogenic effect is also there. They also increase the immunosystem stimulation. The immunity is increased because of the presence of the continuous consumption of the fermented dairy products. There are reports where they also lowers the serum cholesterol is there. The people who are suffering from the constipation and other problems, there is also taken care by continuous consumption of fermented dairy products. Similarly, in cardiovascular things also, this is an anti-hypertensive activity is shown. They also exhibit the anti-allergenic property. So, we can say the fermented dairy products are the products which are produced by the fermentation of oxidation of lactose, and we use the starter culture. The starter culture plays a very important role, and we should see that the rate of acid production should be properly controlled for desirable flavor, and the product is there. And there is a good advantages, lot of nutritional advantages are there, and we should continuously consume the fermented dairy products.